I want to talk about 2 or 3 things that are more local to District 4. Some of you may remember that in the first campaign, my friends Scott Carpenter and Harrison Schmidt came out to campaign with me. Scott was the second American in space, and Harrison was the last man to pilot a vehicle on the surface of the moon. Harrison was also our first scientist in space. We both went to Caltech and had the same education in science. And because he was famous, he became a senator from New Mexico. And scientists are they're trained to solve problems. And of course, scientific problems, we reduce the problem until it's simple enough for us to work on. Human problems, political problems are much more difficult. But anyway, he's a problem solver. He said when he was in the Senate, the most striking thing was he was the only guy in the room that wanted to solve a problem. As a politician, a career politician, confronted with a problem, does not want the problem to go away. He wants to figure out how he can benefit politically from the problem. And I'll illustrate by a couple of examples. And Harrison didn't suggest that all his solutions he proposed were right. He was just the only guy that tried to propose a solution to the problem. One, think of the VA. Now remember what happens at election time, right? 2 campaigns ago, they had a forest plan. It's up and then it dies after the election. Next election, they had a forest plan, House members running. It died. Now they got a VA plan. But you know, it's pretty simple. A 10-year-old can solve the VA problem. We promised our vets, as part of our appreciation in part for the service that they've rendered us, that they would have free the best medical care in America. That's simple, that's the promise. Give every one of them a card that's good for 100% of medical care at any place in this country. They want to go to the VA, fine. They want to go to MD Anderson in Houston, fine. They want to go to the Mayo Clinic, fine. They want to go to their local GP, it doesn't matter. A vet walks into a medical professional anywhere in this country is paid for it. That's gone. You don't need any bureaucracy. You don't need any problems. Why haven't Congress solved the problem in this way? I mean, it's not rocket science. The reason is simple. They benefit from the problem. First, the most important thing for a congressman, a career congressman, to be reelected is constituent service. The more people he has helped individually, the better off he is. This Congress appropriates money for people to talk to citizens who are having some problem with the government. And they cleverly route all that through the Congressional office. So a guy has a problem with the VA, he calls DeFazio's office, he gets one of these guys that we pay the salaries of, and they may help. That gets votes, more and more and more votes. The second is they get to go and give big speeches all the time about how they're going to fix the problems at the VA. They don't fix it, they politic on it. They don't want the problem to go away, they want to benefit from the problem. The second example is what happened to our timber industry in Southern Oregon. If you don't think that a couple of mad congressmen, backed by the commissioners and the law, because the government broke its contracts with the people in these districts, couldn't go into Washington and fix that problem, you think again, they could have fixed it. But they didn't want to fix it, they wanted to politic from it. So instead of forcing the honoring of the contracts that kept our men and women able to work in the woods, they got us some welfare. They got welfare for the counties. They said to the commissioners of these counties that don't make too much noise, it might interfere with the negotiation. And every 2 years they say to the counties and the people, vote for us, you want that welfare to keep coming. And now of course they're running out of money and you know the consequences. They could have fixed that problem. We didn't have to lose our timber industry. They didn't want to fix the problem. They wanted to maneuver themselves into a position to benefit from it. A comparable problem is the problem of education. Now, Fazio spent $3 million on this, so I think you all know that I'm against education in all its forms, and want the kids in the streets. But I have a little different view because I started out as an educator. I taught undergraduates, graduates, postdoctoral students at UCSD and at Stanford. My whole life has been in education. My family supplies curriculums and books for 60,000 students now, a total of 100,000 over the years, award-winning curriculums. And 5 of my 6 kids have doctorates. But somehow that all happened because I'm against education. The situation in our schools is not good, on average. We have a lot of great teachers, and not all of our schools are deaf. But on average, American schools used to be the best in the world 50 years ago. My whole life, I owe to public education. I went to a great public school. That got me into Caltech. That got me a science education. I've had a wonderful life as a result of it. Even got me my wife because she was a scientist. And when I asked her out to dinner the first time, she went and read my publications to see if they were up to her standards to go. But the average in our country was the best in the world. Now it's 30 or 40 as it's down. And this has been done to us by the unions, the bureaucrats, and the politicians. They have diminished the quality of our schools. Now, the only schools that Congress has control over are those in Washington, D.C. The 10th Amendment leaves the education to the states, except for the 50,000 students in Washington, D.C., who happen to be 67% black, 17% Hispanic, and then a mixture of other races. Those are the worst schools in our country. 40% of them don't graduate, and the 60% that do read at a 5th grade level. The 50,000 students are being disadvantaged for life. And Congress is totally responsible for those schools. You won't find a congressman who isn't all for education, right? But is destroying the schools he's actually responsible for. Now, they appropriate money. Each 30-student classroom in D.C. for 9 months gets $450,000 every year. But that money does not go to the classrooms. It stops with the unions, the bureaucrats, the hangers-on, the non-teachers, and the schools. And those people not only soak up money, they make life miserable for the teachers, which makes the education even poorer. Now, Congress, to its credit, a few years ago, made some marginal improvements. Pete voted against every improvement. The reason he did is not because he's against kids, it's for the unions, because the unions helped re-elect him, so he voted the union ticket. But this has to be fixed. It isn't enough to say that we're working on the problem and our schools will gradually improve. That won't help the 50 million children and young people that are in those schools today. And in D.C., it's the same thing. It isn't right to say that 50,000 kids won't learn to read, but we'll do better on the next 50,000. And maybe another 50,000 will get okay. It's not right. So I thought, in keeping with Pete's campaign, that I would advocate that we close the D.C. schools, because people are going to love this. But my plan is to close them in June and open them 3 months later as the best schools in the world. And this could be done. And I will explain. I think you can get Congress to do it. First, one of the excuses the liberals give is, well, the students, you know, they have bad lives and it's a bad community and really hard to teach them. This is just a racist argument. It isn't true. Plenty of evidence that students of all races in all economic conditions can do just great if they're educated well. What I think would be, and of course, there are lots of modifications, but this is an example. You close the schools in June when their school's out, and you lay off everybody in the school system. Okay. Then you bring in top educators who first evaluate all the teachers. And my guess is 90% or more of those teachers are great. I expect most of our teachers are great. They're dedicated people. You don't go into teaching K through 12 unless you really want to do a good job. So most of them would be rehired. And the few that weren't, that they might find some deadwood, and they fix those and get good teachers there. That's number one. You rehire the teachers. Then you spend the next 2 months bringing in, revamping the entire curriculum, making it the best reading, writing, and arithmetic curriculum that can be created, add some history and science, and turn those schools out 3 months later with the best opportunities in the country. There's no lack of money, 450,000. There's only one difference. You notice I didn't rehire any bureaucrats. I didn't rehire any union non-teachers. When my mother and my father and my uncle were both public school teachers. And after the war, my uncle comes home to Iowa, starts public teaching again. He taught a full load of classes, and they gave him a few bucks extra to be superintendent of schools. Those Iowa farmers weren't going to hire people who didn't teach in the schools. They cause us two problems. One, if you look overall across the country, it's 300,000 per classroom. DC's 450, Portland's 360,000. Or over half of that money never reaches the classrooms. It stops in this class of people, the same sort of people that are making it impossible for our businessmen to work. taxes, the regulations, the litigation, this mob of handlers that we're getting. Some of you, probably most of you got that thing from that taxpayers group. In Oregon, the average state employee gets $89,000 in wages and benefits, and the average private employee is down to 49. The 49 pay the wages of the 89. They're creating a highly paid elite bureaucracy that runs our lives. And the same thing happens in the schools. So it isn't just the money wasted on the non-teachers. It's the fact that these people don't take their money and go on vacation. They stay there and run a school system that fails. I think that the DC schools, if you turn them over to the teachers, give the teachers the money, make all the money go directly to the classroom, and are dedicated to the problems, that you can turn those schools around and make them an example to the nation. The other thing is, I think Congress should encourage, but they have no power to do it, I think they should encourage vouchers in all the state schools so that students can go to school of their choice, private, public, whatever, in competition with them improved schools. This could be done. You could certainly change the lives of those 50,000 kids in D.C. and make them an example to the country and the world, instead of letting them continue down. I want to share with you two experiences I had that are related to this. I was at UCSD. I went to graduate Caltech in there, and then I was on the faculty. And I taught, at one point, 300 engineering and science students chemistry every year. And I had all kind of races in there. I didn't care what their backgrounds were. They weren't getting out of that class without chemistry because their careers were dependent on it. I'm down in La Jolla one night eating hamburgers with some grad students, and a formidable black man walks over and sits down and starts talking to us. He was a fellow faculty member. He was a faculty member in the third college at UCSD. It was created just for minority students. And he was quite politically different from me, with Black Power, Third World, the discussion. But turned to education, and I said, well, in my class, I don't make any distinctions. I work hard, I do all the normal things, plus every night, 5 days a week, I go to the lecture hall, and I tutor students until they stop coming. It's usually about 3 hours, and about 50 of the 300 usually come. I do anything I can to teach chemistry, but if they don't learn it, they don't pass the course. And this guy looks at me and he says, you're right. He says, your course is tough. I know because I'm tutoring 2 students in your course. But you are right. He says, our worst enemies are these white liberals that come over to the third college, teach watered-down classes to our students, and turn them into permanent second-class citizens. And that's what they do. And that's what they're doing. And you know it. And now they're doing it to us too. Anyway, you get the point. That's the idea. And of course, these white professors, I know them, and they were always bragging because they were helping these poor, unfortunate, inferior people. I'm not sure they were racist, because if you were conservative white, they thought you were poor, unfortunate too. The other thing I wanted to mention, and some of you may have heard me talk about this before, but we had measures, each of our counties. Curry County is a wonderful county, and I would sure rather be here when the economy gets bad than in Lynn County, I can assure you, because this county can be self-sufficient, and it's a wonderful place, and it's wonderful to see you all. But Josephine County was attacked too. We're always being attacked by someone who wanted to state us that wants to change things for us. We had some measures on the ballot that would have markedly changed our county and made it much more oppressive. And we beat it 79 to 21. But I was out at a 9/12 meeting one night passing out signs, and I finished. But as I went into the meeting, one of the ladies pulled at my sleeve and she said, Art, watch out, he's not one of us. And this guy is going in the meeting. And I looked over there. He was obviously a counterculture Democrat. We got a lot of counterculture people in Jefferson County. He sat right in the front row. So when I finished, I said, I've lived in this county, this a couple of years ago. I said, I've lived in this county 33 years. And there are a lot of people on the streets of Cave Junction, a lot different from me. And there was a little fit of laughter. I said, but when I see those people, I'm glad they're there. Because if they can live the way they want to live, I can live the way I want to live. Amen. Then I pointed at him, it was about where you are. I said, this man, for example, I'm sure he didn't vote for me. You know what he said? I will next time. He wants his freedom. He has been given the greatest possible thing of value, secular thing of value that we can imagine. He's been given a human life. He wants to live that life free. He wants life, liberty, and property. He wants to get the most he can out of that life, and he wants to be left alone so he can do it. And the Founding Fathers created for us a country where the government, we would protect it from the government because they knew that governments tended to take those rights away from people. And they are making progress. Today, the government and entities in with the government own about half the stocks, equities in the United States stock market. They own over half of the mortgages. And they own a lot of our land. And you know what happens to our western lands in that situation. They have bought our wealth from us with our own money. And they're on their way to buying the other half. Socialism is when the government owns everything. And the elite, this highly paid, unionized, bureaucratic elite, which is paid twice what we are the foot soldiers of that coming socialism. Now, I'm not saying that to condemn all public employees. We have many very fine, hardworking public servants in our county government in Josephine County. Those people are not the problem. But the growth of this thing and the power that's been given to these people has been, it's the point of the spirit taking away our freedom. So I'm glad we're in this basket now. I noticed Ted Cruz is in the basket now too,
Yeah.
which makes me very happy because 3 days before he dropped out, I was driving a 26-foot truck filled to the brim with Cruz signs in northern Oregon and southern Washington, which are big signs, and I supported Ted Cruz. But for Trump's a nominee, he's made some very, very fine policy statements. He campaigns a little differently than is normal, but I hope he wins, and there's a chance he'll win big. If he does, we may sweep in a lot of other people in Oregon, unusual people. But I'm glad we're all in that basket together. Ted Cruz won't be president, but he and Mike Lee and Rand Paul and the others like him will be the conscience of the Senate, and our Senate sure needs a conscience. And they are constitutional conscience for the Senate. It'll be a great help to Trump. I think we have a chance to elect this guy. You don't see many Robinson signs right now, and the guys that put them up, my children started, children, they're young, they're 20s, in their 20s, 30s, but they started making campaign signs. We got so interested in signs in this political process. They got some old machinery and revamped it. Now they're making the signs of 150 candidates, and it's taking 16 hours a day to make all these signs. They used to put our signs up, all the highway signs, and then Mark Cosby did a lot of them. Mark called me and said, gee, what do I do? I need to put up Trump signs, but I'm not putting up yours. I said, put up Trump signs. If Trump wins, that's what matters. People have seen our signs. But the political process this time, the American people may win. I put it this way, and a nice lady wrote me a letter, and she misunderstood me, and I hope you don't misunderstand me, but we are scientists, and we occasionally have stepped aside from our scientific work to do other things. During the Cold War, we became so worried about nuclear weapons. For several years, we stepped aside from what we normally did and worked on civil defense, nuclear defense. And we built an 8,000-man organization around the country working on civil defense during the Reagan administration. It was so effective that when my wife died, FEMA put a 2-page memorial to her in their annual report because we worked so hard on civil defense. And today it's the same reason. We got into the political thing because we were so frightened of it that we wanted to help. But if you look at our history, and I started thinking about this in the civil defense work, Americans, our country is just a phenomenon. Nothing like this on earth has ever been created. Not because we had special genes, but because we were free. It's the first time in history that a great people with natural resources had been set free. And what was built was unimaginable. Our founding fathers knew it was morally right to be free, but they could not have imagined what could be built by free people. But in addition to the productivity that we all enjoy because of the freedom, the rising thing in our country, freedom also breeds what I call wild cards. Unusual people that come out and do something unusual that we need when we're in unusual trouble. They aren't, they're sort of, I call them wild cards. They're different. And Mr. Trump is different, right? And he won't get everything right, but he's different. I think of a man I knew during the civil defense days. He was a man named Spinell, and he knew a lot about rubber because he had a big corporation that used rubber. But he saw a war coming, and he knew that American rubber depended on Asian rubber trees, and the Japanese were going to grab those trees. So he went all over the country to talk to politicians, mostly in Washington, saying, you've got to stockpile latex. Nobody would listen to him. So he went to DuPont, the first DuPont. Now, Spinell was a tough-talking guy. You knew it scared him. He was a typical industrialist at that time. DuPont was probably pretty tough, too. But they were patriots. And DuPont says, do you know how to store this stuff? And Spinell says, yes. And DuPont says, okay, I'll buy it, you store it. So for months before the war started, ships were coming around South America carrying latex. And when the war started, that's why our country had rubber tires for vehicles, military vehicles. They gave, the French appreciated this more than the Americans. They gave the French Legion of Honor. But he was a wild card, an unusual man, a man you probably wouldn't have liked to know or be too much friends with normally because he was a really tough customer. But he was different. He's the kind of thing that freedom breeds, and you're beginning to see that now. And I think Mr. Trump is that way. He's sort of a wild card. He's different. And I had a lady who wrote to me and she said, you should say things like that about Mr. Trump. Well, I mean it complimentarily. We are free people. That means all of us are able to produce more than we consume as long as we're free to do so. And then our free country generates unusual people. And I don't have to name them for you. Each of you have your own heroes. Unfortunately, in the 1770s, we had a whole bunch of them at once. And that created our country. So we need, I think it's clear, we need a clean slate in Washington. We need to toss most of these congressmen and senators out because the career people just make decisions for their own benefit, and that isn't for our benefit. I think we should realize that we should go back to what we had after the founding of the country. You know, the average congressman only served one term the first 100 years. Yes. One term. It was just a public service. You guys went down, you said, guy at the grocery store, you're running the grocery store, and said, you know, Ike, everybody likes you, you're a nice family, we know you're honest, we'd like you to represent us for 2 years. And Ike says, who's going to take care of my grocery store? I don't have time to do this. But secretly, he's kind of getting a little proud. They chose him, you know. He runs, maybe he runs against the guy across town, one of them wins, they go up, serve for 2 years, and come back. That's the way it was for 100 years. As soon as these people are in office a long time, their career is more important than the public business, and that's why we have degenerated as far as we can. So, and I've probably talked longer than I should, but I'll stop, and if you have a couple of questions, and people have the space to listen to them.
Okay.
You referenced the Oregon Taxpayers Association and the average base salary that the state employee gets.
Yeah.
And also included in that information was the state of Oregon is adding every day 17 employees to the list. And I've got friends, we all do, of course, that work for the state of Oregon. And I look at these people and I say, do you not get it? Do you think this, you're on thin ice, you really think this can be sustained? And worse, if it can be sustained, what's going to happen long term? And so I really appreciate that you reference that.
You know, 50 years ago, many of you remember that, like I did, some of you don't. But 50 years ago, public employees and university professors were all paid a lot less than people in the private sector. The public employees were sort of tenured, you know, and it was believed as a public service, so they were paid less. And university professors were too. They figured you guys had tenure, research is fun, teaching is fun. When I was at Caltech, the Nobel Prize winners were living as low middle class people. There was a lot of money going to faculty, and certainly not when I became faculty member. That's changed. You have this highly paid elite in the public sector.
But we're not saying they should be paid less.
We should be paid more. If they would let our economy thrive, we would be.
Yes, it all balances out.
But that's what happened. And what's happening in the universities today is this cost have run sky high. One, you have huge professorial salaries, huge numbers of bureaucrats we never had in universities before. And so that nobody can work his way through school anymore. 50 years ago, you could work your way through college if you didn't have the money. Now you can't, but it's okay, we'll help you, we'll loan you some money. And of course, then you get out. I stopped, the boys were repairing our washing machine, and they bought some parts from a guy over in the place I was passing by. I stopped to get these parts. The guy just got out of Oregon State, the poli-sci major. He's got $68,000 in student debt. He's selling his parts of the washing machine for $35, trying to get food. The idea that our students graduate from college already deep in debt, even before they get them work done in a house, is insanity. This isn't caused just because we're being nice to them. It's caused because we've let these costs run sky high. And then but it's okay, we'll loan you some money. Don't worry about it. And then, of course, as an addition, someday we may let the debts go, both for us. This is not a good thing.
Art,
Any
if you
more
look at the cost of healthcare versus colleges,
Yeah.
healthcare is far lower in increases than college costs are.
But now, the college costs,
Both are bad, but
Caltech was one of the more expensive places in the country because it's so good. When I was so good in science, when I went there, my room, board, tuition, everything cost me $2,000 a year. Today it's $60. That's a 30-fold increase. That's more than inflation.
right,
Medical care has also gone ahead of inflation.
right, but education
And
is
that's not
higher.
because our doctors are getting rich. It's because the government has forced a giant bureaucracy on the backs of the medical system.
Right,
I spent my life in medical research. I see all kinds of advanced things that could be in our doctor's offices that aren't there today because there's a multi-billion-dollar thing between science and applied medicine. That thing is the government and a giant bureaucracy. The same thing is true of our power systems. Yeah.
Since we talk about economy,
Yeah.
may I have a different question?
Yeah.
What do you think in the hard time which we will go into? What do you think about DuPont stock?
About what?
DuPont's stock.
DuPont stock? I
Yeah.
wouldn't have any idea. What's happened? It used to be, I remember my father was an engineer, so he had a reasonable good income. She was very frugal. So she took the money, she saved it. She was a very, very frugal lady, and she saved it for their retirement. And she liked savings and loans, and there was a $10,000 limit insured. So she'd fill up one set, and then she'd go to another step. When she died, my dad died in a plane accident, and she died because of it. So when I inherited their savings for retirement, it was a little stack of savings and loan books. But late in her life, she got a Merrill Lynch account and started speculating in the stock market. The reason was when these people took us off the gold standard and inflated our money supply, the inflation each year was taking more away from her than she could save that year.
Yeah.
You see, say she saved for 20 years, if you take 5% of what she saved, that's all she's going to save this year.
That's what we.
They've turned every American from a saver into a speculator. In the stock market, there's some very smart people, professionals there, and if you go up against those people as an amateur, you're just lucky if you're doing all right. The stock market, we're speculating everywhere. Every American is speculating in real estate, houses, stocks,
Yeah.
precious metals, everything. They've made speculators out of the American people, and most of us are not skilled in speculation.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't save your money because they take it away from you faster than you save it. So this is a problem with the government and the bankers, and that's another 20 minutes you don't want to listen to. But it's an awful problem. And
So
I
what's they gonna do?
wouldn't even begin to make a suggestion about stocks because I know some of the people that are successful in that market. They're some of the smartest people on earth, and I wouldn't go up against them at all. If they're paying what they're paying for that stock, there's a reason, and I wouldn't understand it.